Good morning. Welcome to Monday Morning with Tanny. Today is August the 10th, 2020. I can't believe that it's here already. If you're here, can you just say hello? Let me know that you can hear me, that you're participating. Know that you're welcome. If you don't feel comfortable doing that, I understand. That's okay too. I would appreciate spreading this message, sharing and liking. It just helps reach more and more people. This is important things for people to know. And it's important that you are supported in your grief and mourning journey. So I just want you to know that I appreciate you. I appreciate you listening. And I hope that this is helpful for you. Today we're going to carry on with children and grief and mourning. Again, just so you know, I super adore Dr. Alan Wolfelt. He has a wonderful companioning philosophy. Anybody can be a companion in grief, and it's very empowering, and it's a good place to learn what to do in something that all of us will experience, and all of us can be supportive in others' grief journeys and in our own. This is the book that I super love, and I'm going through and talking about. I go through it quite thoroughly. I think I'm working on that. However, it's very shiny. Oh well. However, I do recommend buying it. You can write in the margins. You can connect your own thoughts to it. I know as I go through, each time I'm looking through it, I always come up with new things. I'll probably even talk about a couple today that I thought of as I was writing out, just connecting to people that I know and shows that I've seen and things like that. So this is Companioning the Grieving Child, a Soulful Guide for Caregivers, and it's again written by Dr. Alan D. Wolfelt, PhD. So I'm just going to place it here so you can remember what it looks like. So today I'm going to start talking about the 12 dimensions that the children will be going through. Again, as with all grief and mourning, it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are, it is a messy business. It's not linear. There's no particular order. I'm going to go through the 12 listed by Dr. Alan Wolfelt just because we have to list them in some sort of order. Doesn't mean we're going to experience them in that order. So I just want you to know, so when these things pop up, that you're like, oh, I remember that dimension. And you're able to respond with compassion and caring. With each of the 12 dimensions, I'm going to talk about each of them. I'm also going to talk about how you can be helpful and supportive during them. Because I really want this to be a thing that helps you with tools. Tools are very important. I was not really taught a lot about how grief and mourning works in my family. I don't know. I don't blame anybody for sure. Because obviously they weren't taught, but somehow things have gotten erased and we just are unsure about how to do anything. And we're trying to block it off and put it away. And these videos are not about blocking it off and putting it away. It's about learning how to work with our emotions and go through them and support them. So let's get started. The first dimension, and I actually have them in the title this time. The first dimension is shock and apparent lack of feelings. One of the greatest things I remember hearing that's always stuck with me actually came from, I believe, Gordon Neufeld and Gabor Mate. They wrote a book called Hold On to Your Kids. And both of them are very well educated and are very compassionate people. And I'm not sure which one, I just know that they're tied together in my mind. So the thing that they said is that our mind protects us from that which is most painful. So when we get news of somebody we love dying, our brain is going to go into protection mode. Because if it didn't, the entirety of what that means would probably destroy us. So thank you, brain. Thank you for giving us the ability to have shock. Shock is also, it's like a generic term for disbelief, numbness, and denial. Sometimes outside observers will think that this is a complete denial or indifference of the death. And that's not how it works. Children often, especially, will be told somebody has died, and then they will immediately go play. Because that's what children do. They play. And they cannot face all of it at once. Sometimes outside observers may feel hurt or angry at the child for apparently not giving in to like deep expression of emotional pain, and that hurt in the outsider, the observer, can sometimes like make them kind of distance themselves from the child. They're like, well, if you don't have any feelings, then why would I want to be in a relationship with you? And I don't know how to support you. That's very painful for the child and for the caregiver. So it's very important. I recall hearing about someone whose parent had died. And this was probably middle school age children. And the one child reported to their mother, so-and-so's parent died. And they were told on Facebook. So it was social media, which is a way that children play now. Social media, through video games, Roblox, all kinds of things like that. And the mother was surprised to hear that this child whose parent had apparently just died was actually on the computer. And I mean just died, like just heard an hour ago type thing. And hearing that story seems kind of shocking, because shouldn't you be sitting with your family and practicing mourning and grieving and crying and doing all the things? And that's not how kids do it. They don't. They dose themselves with the feelings. It's the brain's way of making sure they don't get overwhelmed with all of the things. And it's super important. So the reality comes in little doses. Little bits come in. And kids play. They often play through their grief. So they might start to choose different kinds of games to play on the videos. Or if they're little, they might play different games with their cars or use different toys. They're just going to express that a little bit differently. Sometimes when children are being very stoic and appear to have no feelings and are numb, some adults can affirm this. They're like, oh, so-and-so's taking it so well. What a good child you are. You're being so strong for everybody. And then they will internalize that, and that doesn't give them permission to experience anything other than that stoicism. And some children and some adults feel like maybe the child didn't love the person that died. And that's not the case. It's shock. It's the brain protecting them from the massive impact of what they've just heard. I actually last night or recently was watching The Crown, which is on Netflix if you want to check it out. And I'm in season, this is a spoiler alert. So I'm in a later season, and it's talking about an experience in Wales where there was a mine disaster, and something like 150 children or something died in that town because of an avalanche. And the Queen didn't cry until much later. And she said that she didn't cry, I think, when her dad died, the king. And she wondered what was wrong with her. And as I watched, because I'm a counselor and I'm interested in grief, I thought of this. I thought, what if, because of the type of child she was and her temperament and the experience, when her dad died, the shock came in, and then she might have got affirmed for being so strong and so royal and so icy, and just embodied that. And it might have even happened before her dad died. Maybe a pet had died and she had gone into that shock, because the Queen was very much loves her dogs, her little corgis, and horses. So experience of death might have happened before that, and the response was to be numb. So I just wonder that if that's what happened with that situation. Anyway, it's a good show to watch. It shows some different dimensions of how people respond in grief. So don't say, be strong. They wouldn't want you to be sad. You don't need to cry. Why are you crying? If children are responding however they're responding, just be supportive. We don't need to shame them for not crying. We don't need to shame them for crying. We just need to be there in their experience. This shock and apparent lack of feelings is often most observant within the first year or two after the death. It also can come up on anniversaries or special holiday times or birthdays. Any significant kind of life event, a person can end up with shock. There's times in our lives when we come up and we're like, I didn't even think about experiencing this event without my parent here. It wasn't even on my radar when I was 7 and they died. And now here I am about to walk down the aisle and I never thought of that. There's so many times. Again, grief and mourning, not linear. Not linear at all. So how do we help? I've already mentioned a little bit on how we help. But the first one is, like I said, accept the apparent lack of feelings as a natural response. This is the child's brain protecting their heart. They need protecting, and this is a very natural thing. Talk about death with the child, not at the child. So this is being curious, not lecturing them on what happens or how it happens, but asking open-ended questions. What's this experience like for you? Where do you think your loved one is? Tell me what's happening for you. And be kind. And respect the child's need to talk or not to talk about the death. The not to talk one can be very hard. As is for me as a counselor. It's like, oh, I so think people need to talk. But I also realize we have to talk on our own time. And children especially, have to give them time and patience and play with them. I've had children in my office and all we did was play. And we may play the same exact scenario that seems to have nothing to do with the loss for a long time. And then one day, they'll open up. Or they might just say, I feel better now, thank you. So it's responding to the individual. It looks like I'm lagging. I wish somebody would be here to talk to me about that. But anyway. Okay, so the main thing is develop a relationship and be open to the experience the child's having. Anyone that has the capacity to love and to feel also has the capacity to grieve and mourn. And if they aren't showing it, it doesn't mean it's not happening. It doesn't mean it's not going on inside them. So, let's go on to Dimension 2. Dimension 2 is physiological changes. So that's changes in our body. It is very well documented that our bodies respond to our emotional states. If you're ever curious, check out the ACE study. That's the Adverse Childhood Events. And it talks about there's a scale and a list of things that can happen in a child's life, and then corresponding health and psychological things that can happen in the future because of them. It's a very powerful thing to look at. It's not something that means that you're just going to have this horrible, terrible, unhealthy life. It's just helpful for some awareness and helping people get support so that they can integrate their things that happen to them into their lives, their traumas. So, back to the body responding. So here's some of the things that you can expect. Okay, not expect. That's a big word. You can look for. Let's look at tiredness and lack of energy. The brain uses a lot of energy. And when someone dies, the brain goes through all of the past and all of the possible futures and rewrites everything. And that's exhausting. And even just talking about grief, it's your heart. My heart hurts. It's sad. All of our body is very sensitive. Sleep changes. So you might sleep less, you might sleep more. Those are all very normal things. Our bodies are just trying to figure out how to do life. Appetite changes. Lack or excess of appetite is going to change. Some people have this hole in their stomach and they just can't imagine anything filling that, and other people are looking for the comfort that food stimulates. Tightness of the throat. They might not be able to swallow very good. It may be really hard to talk. It may be the verge of tears. Shortness of breath. Again, it's all related. It's so hard to breathe in a world now where that person isn't here and all of the weight is on you. So helping with learning about deep breathing and some grounding can really help with these things. Learning how to relax the body, super powerful. General nervousness or trembling. We're flooded with lots of hormones that are telling us the world isn't safe and secure the way it was. Children experience that. They're very physiological. Headaches. Again, brain's working a lot. There's lots of stress and tension going on. Stomach pain. Our stomachs make the most serotonin in our bodies. That is the happy hormone. And it makes sense that there would be pain there, because there's not a lot of happiness when this occurs. Loss of muscular strength. Just might find that there's just, along with that tiredness and lack of energy, you're just not as strong as you were. And skin rashes. Just showing there's something wrong. Sometimes children may need to be sick, and not on purpose. It's just a physiological thing that happens to get emotional comfort. Our society is often much more comfortable with dealing with physical health than we are with mental and emotional health. So, if one is sick, then they can get that comfort and that care that they require. So please pay attention to those physiological needs and realize they probably are reflections of emotional needs. Sometimes children may end up exhibiting physical symptoms that reflect the person that passed away. So if their loved one had a heart attack, they might experience chest pains and be concerned about that. If it has been a long illness and the children have seen different symptoms that have occurred over those illnesses, they may also exhibit those as well. They're just processing, they have fears, this is how they're going. Please don't tell them they're ridiculous. Take care of them. And how you can help is so many ways, but remember their bodies are responding to death. Children bodies, adult bodies, we're all bodies and we respond. This is a massive change. And they need emotional connection. And sometimes we get emotional connection by getting taken care of our physical. So as a sidebar, before I go on to the next dimension, I'm going to talk a little bit about children grieving differently than adults. So a children's world is primarily play. They learn through play, they learn rules through play, they learn how to interact with people through play. They're far more to obey rules that they have made themselves in play than they do in real life. For example, bedtime. So they're going to play through this. Children tend to mourn in doses, as I explained. They are not going to sit down for 2 hours at a time crying very often. There's going to be the odd child that will, and that's okay. Cognitive development affects a child's capacity to integrate the finality, the inevitability, and the irreversibility of death. So expect your child to, depending on when the person died, to go through this time and time and time again as their cognitive ability adjusts. If your child's cognitive ability is delayed, then be patient with that. It's also going to affect their grief and mourning process. It affects everything. Children are at the mercy of those around them for help or hindrance. So if your child doesn't have a lot of help, and even if you are just unable to help because it is so exhausting for you, you have had a loss as well, look for supports. You're not always going to find them in family and friends. That's why there's counselors involved. You can find groups. Look for those helping supports and really avoid those that are super hindering. You don't have to avoid those people forever, but protect your child as they go through this process. Children, especially teens, do not want to be different from their peers. So they might not go to their peers. They might change peers. A lot of things can happen, but they are not going to want to be different, so they might not even talk about it with their peers. We assume our kids are going to go to their peers, but it's really difficult to talk about something that somebody else hasn't experienced. I really, really, really like the idea of groups so that children have the opportunity to talk about their losses with other people that have had losses. Excuse me. Please don't punish or shame children for unfounded feelings of illness. As I said, they're trying to get that care. They just need care, and sometimes they don't know how to word it. They don't know how else to express it. But they know when they're sick, they get taken care of. Stay conscious of any pre-existing conditions in the grieving child. If a child already has some sort of illness or really resemble the person that passed away. They might be afraid they're going to die. A child is also going to be afraid that you are going to die. They're suddenly going to realize that people die. And so now they're going to look around and go, any of these people around me could die. So be kind and love them and love yourself. Get medical examinations. It's okay to take them to the doctor and show them that they're not having a heart attack. You can alleviate some of those concerns for them. You may know that there's nothing wrong with them, but sometimes having that little extra voice can help. And children may exhibit, as I said, symptoms of the illness of the loved one that they had. They're living through the situation, and they don't know always how to talk about it. Adults don't even always know how to talk about it. So, back on track, Dimension 3, regression. Regression is a return to a time when the child felt safe, protected, and secure. When someone dies that's important to them, that safety, protection, and security is going to be frayed. It might be shattered. Depends on the relationship. So children are going to naturally, and adults too, by the way, are going to go back to a time in their development when they were secure and protected. I know even for myself as an adult, when I lose someone that's very important to me, I require way more hugs and way more cuddling. And I really like it when somebody makes me food. So for kids, they might suddenly be afraid to go outside to play. They just don't know what's out there. Especially if it was an accident that happened that was unexpected. They may suddenly forget how to tie their shoes. They may need help getting dressed. And maybe they need help being fed. All of those things are just saying, I need a little extra care. My world has been shattered. And my brain is so busy right now. And my heart hurts. They may need to be nursed or rocked. They may need extra help at school. They were doing those multiplication tables perfectly fine, and now all of a sudden they can't seem to add 2 plus 2. It's okay to give them help. Please talk to the teacher and the support staff and let them know what's going on and help them companion your child through this grief by being supportive. They may decide to sleep with you if you're a parent. They just need that cuddling and that reassuring and that knowing that you're still alive when they wake up in the middle of the night. They have big fears. Death didn't even occur to them before, and now it does all of a sudden. We talked already, they might play a sick role, and they may play a sick role to avoid going to school. And that is because when you are grieving and your brain is bombarded and taken over by that, it's really hard to learn. When you don't feel safe and secure and you have massive amounts of fear, learning is the lowest thing we need to do. This is taking care of themselves and supporting them. Your child has a lot of years to learn. A lot of years. And even if they get a little bit behind, it's not going to wreck anything. Not supporting them on this journey is a lot more detrimental than getting a little behind at school. They may have separation fears. They may be afraid to be separated from you, which totally makes sense because death is the ultimate separation, so even the little separations can be difficult. And that's one of the reasons why also children will often sleep with their parents after a death, is because that separation over the night, that 8 to 9 to 10 hours, is a long separation for them. So be patient and kind. I know of a great book. It's called The Invisible String. Oh, I wish I had it here. Maybe I'll try to find it if I do have it around here and show it next time. It's lovely, and it talks about a string that connects us to each of the people in our lives, and it even talks about when people die, how it connects. It's a fabulous thing I like to work with children on, and I get them to draw that string to all the people that they love, and we imagine them way on the other end of the world or high in the sky, or even the people that have passed away, and it's a very, very wonderful way to connect and bridge that huge separation. Baby talk. So they might go back to baby talk. And that's okay. It's not going to last forever. They're just trying to remember a time when they felt secure and safe and protected. And maybe that was at that age when they talked in baby talk. And they might be unable to have peer connections the way they used to. Thank you for waiting. I know we're going over a little overtime today, but I want to finish this. So, the peer connections make sense because children don't like to be different from their peers. So suddenly, what are they going to talk about? Everything's changed. This huge, huge thing is on their mind now. And they can't talk about that all the time with their peers. So they might have difficulty. So be supportive of them going with peers, but if they go for a sleepover or they go out to a little party or anything like that, and they need to come home, give them that option. You can give them a code word to call you with. You can give them anything to help them know that you are going to be there for them. So, often children get punished for having a lack of self-control, lack of discipline, and because they're going backwards. So please try to avoid that. And remember, you're human. And you can ask for forgiveness and apologize if you do go the other way. You're human. Be kind to yourself too. Sometimes these behaviors actually get reinforced and children become overprotective and indulged. So we have to treat them with a loving manner, but we cannot make it so that it soothes our needs by them doing this. So it's an interesting balance, and I always recommend self-care, self-care, self-care for the caregivers. If you're companioning a grieving child, it's quite possible you're also grieving yourself. Please find self-care. Please be compassionate to yourself. Please find somebody to talk to about these things. Educate yourself. It's very important. You are very important. You are so important. And you are so important to this child. How do we help? Allow the child to regress. And this may take a year or two. And like I said, nothing is linear. So if it pops up, be like, yes, I've heard about this. I understand. I have to be compassionate and kind and take care of them. And realize that there's something going on, something processing, something happening that's making this regression happen. And it's okay. It's okay. It fills a need. Be patient and understanding. Kids don't always have the words to talk about how they're feeling. Adults don't always have the words to talk about their feeling, but children are so good at physically showing us how they're feeling. And try to see the unmet need for the behavior. Why are they doing this? What's going on? Is it an anniversary? Is it a special time of the year? Is there a big situation happening in this child's world where they would normally reach out to the person that has passed away? What's going on? What's the unmet need? Are you not able to spend as much attention to them as you normally have? what's going on, and provide a trusting, supportive presence for the child. If you are overwhelmed and overdone, please find someone who is not, who can support you even for an hour or half an hour. Here and there, you can use video conferencing to have them talk with the child. Take care of the child and take care of you. So that's the 3 for today. Hopefully next week we'll be able to go through 3 or 4 more and talk more about the 12 dimensions of childhood grief. Thank you so much for listening. Please share and like, and know that you can reach us at www.fcss.ca at any time and get some counseling or parenting help, or we have help for seniors and volunteer opportunities and all kinds of things that can be supportive. And I too am available for counseling. Currently during COVID, I do mostly phone and video, but I do have a little bit of face-to-face out in Barnwell, Alberta. So thank you so much for participating. Again, please share, please comment, please send me some messages. I'd love to hear from you. And until next week, take care of you.